Hey everyone, how are you doing? The open model race just got two names that deserve attention. On one side, there's DeepSeek V4 with 1.6 trillion parameters and a clear proposal to compete in reasoning, programming, and advanced agents. On the other side, there's Xiaomi's MiMo 2.5 Pro, which comes with 1 trillion parameters and a different promise to make agents work longer with more coherence and using fewer tokens. And this comparison is interesting because we're not just talking about a chatbot. We're talking about models designed to write code, control tools, analyze entire projects, perform longer tasks, and serve as the foundation for a new generation of AI agents. DeepSeek bets on brute force, massive context, and top performance among open models. Xiaomi, on the other hand, is betting on efficiency, longer trajectories, and practical use in environments like cloud code, open code, and other agentic systems. So the question isn't just which model is the most powerful. The real question is which one makes more sense for the future of AI agents. Is DeepSeek V4 the new open model to beat, or does MiMo 2.5 Pro show that efficiency can be worth more than size? Shall we find out together? So, let's get into the video. Well guys, today I want to bring you a comparison between DeepSeek V4, which has two versions here, Pro and Flash, and also MiMo 2.5 Pro, which are two open source models that were recently released and promise to compete in this artificial intelligence niche, especially when we move away from the West and look elsewhere. For the models being developed in China, which are quite competent when compared to these more expensive and advanced models we have on the market today. Starting here with DeepSeek, the preview of DeepSeek V4 is already officially available and open source. Then they present the variants here. DeepSeek V4 Pro has 1.6 trillion parameters in total, 49 billion active parameters, and they say here that its performance rivals the main closed models in the world. Then there's also the other variant, which is a bit smaller, DeepSeek V4 Flash, with 284 billion parameters in total, 13 billion active parameters, and they say here that it's the faster, more efficient, and more economical option. For those who want to use it via API, how much does it cost? DeepSeek V4 Pro costs $1.74 for input and $3.48 for output, all of that for 1 million tokens. The Flash version costs 14 cents for input and 28 cents for output, also for 1 million tokens. It looks like they have a promotion going on that drastically reduces this price, but the promotion lasts until March 5th. If you hurry, there's still time depending on when you're watching this video. They even prepared this little table here for us to see it better. So, DeepSeek V4 Pro, 1.6 trillion parameters, 49 billion active, 33 trillion pre-training tokens, a context window of 1 million. Then, in the Flash version, 284 billion parameters, 13 billion active, 32 trillion pre-trained tokens, a little less here than the Pro version, and the context window is the same, with 1 million tokens. And in both versions, you have the expert and instant options here. Now let's talk about the new model from Xiaomi, called MiMo. Listen up. The MiMo V2.5 is now officially available and open source. It has an MIT license supporting commercial deployment, continuous training, and fine-tuning with no additional authorization required. So you can implement it, you can modify it without needing prior authorization. They also say here, two models, both supporting a context window of 1 million tokens. And what is the 2.5 Pro version for? It was built for complex agent and coding tasks, ranking number 1 among open source models in GDP-Vol AA and Claw Evolve. As for the V2.5, which is not the Pro, it's a native omnimodal model with strong agent capabilities. Continuing here on the blog, they say that MiMo V2.5 Pro is an MOE model with 1 trillion parameters and 42 billion active parameters, built on a hybrid attention architecture with a context window of 1 million tokens. So in terms of training and context window, both models are on par with each other. When we look at the benchmarks, we notice that there isn't a direct comparison between MiMo and DeepSeek. And all these comparisons here, both for MiMo and DeepSeek, are made with other artificial intelligence models, but only with previous versions, except for Gemini 3.1 Pro, which hasn't been modified yet. But here we have the comparison made with GPT 5.4 and with Claude Opus 4.6. It's the same thing that happens in the comparison released by the DeepSeek team. Here we have a direct comparison with 4.6 Max and with GPT 5.4 X-Ray. Here they are using the most powerful versions of both models, because here in the Anthropic model I have the Max, and here in OpenAI the X-Ray. Notice that when we take a look at the comparisons here in the benchmarks, both models, DeepSeek and MiMo, appear in intermediate positions, especially when this comparison is made with the closed source models. So, we have some progress here with the open source models, because both DeepSeek V4 and MiMo 2.5 Pro have made progress. They've raised the bar compared to previous versions. So, in the comparison there, when we have these two models side by side, apparently they have very similar performance. And the coolest thing is that they're open source models. And another very interesting thing, the API price for both models is much lower when we compare it to models from Anthropic, for example, which are the most expensive ones we have on the market today. Take a look at the API price here. The V2.5 Pro costs $1 for input and $3 for output. The V2.5, not the Pro version, is even cheaper. 40 cents for input and $2 for output. So if you make this comparison here with the Anthropic models, it doesn't even have to be Claude Opus. Even Sonnet itself is much more expensive than these open source models. So it's an opportunity, especially if you work with implementation. If you want to use the API of these two models in your project, they are much cheaper and also quite efficient. So, let's go now because I want to show you a comparison I made here with DeepSeek V4 Pro and MiMo 2.5 Pro. I used the same prompt on both models, and now I'm going to show you what the results were. Oh, and before I start, a quick explanation. I tested DeepSeek V4 Pro here inside Arena AI. Why? Because here I can choose exactly the version of the model I want to use. If I come here to the DeepSeek chat, there's no option to choose between Pro and Flash, so you never know which model is being used. But here on Arena AI, which is the old one, LEM Arena, I can make that choice. So here on my left side, DeepSeek V4 Pro, and on my right side, MiMo V2.5 Pro. I tested the Xiaomi model within the platform itself, because here in the selector, I can choose MiMo V2.5 Pro, alright? So, let's go. Same prompt, make a clone of the Flappy Bird game. Add a scoreboard, sound effects, nice textures, single HTML. First here, the little game made by DeepSeek V4 Pro, pretty cool, right? Good rendering, nice textures, scoreboard. Sound effect, just like I asked. Now here on the other side, the game made by MiMo V2.5 Pro. Pretty cool too, right? Same thing. Sound effects, scoreboard, good rendering, end of game, scoreboard score, record, everything working perfectly. So here we have a difference regarding the rendering model. But regarding gameplay and what I asked for in my prompt, both models delivered a fully functional replica of the game. In this other example here, the same prompt for both AIs. Create an amazing web page. Introduce yourself. That is, the MiMo 2.5 Pro and the DeepSeek V4 Pro. I'll put it here in full screen so we can see it better. So this one here was the page generated by DeepSeek V4 Pro. Notice that I have all the elements here working perfectly, right? So it managed to render the page here in a very coherent way. It included everything about the model, what the main advantages are. It made this chart here comparing the performance of DeepSeek V4 Pro with other AI models. So it brought me a really nice result here. Now let's see the version made by MiMo 2.5 Pro. Notice that it has a different rendering engine here. It did the same thing. I have here everything related to this new model. It brought all the information with capabilities, philosophy, values, origin, and so on. But notice that the rendering here comes from a completely different design choice, especially regarding the fonts used and also the color palette. In my opinion, the site created here by MiMo looks more professional. I move away a bit from those web pages that are obviously created by AI. This one isn't. The rendering is good, as are the text, the fonts, and the color palette. Everything is organic and very well organized, so that's a matter of opinion. Later, let me know in the comments which page you like the most. Personally, I like this one the most, which was made by MiMo 2.5 Pro. Well, in this other test, the rendering of the solar system, starting here with DeepSeek V4 Pro. Look, it gave me a really cool result here with the speeds here that I can select, and then I can change them here. Look how cool that is. I can pause it here. I'll leave it at 1/4. Look here, I have the rendering on all axes. Everything is working perfectly. When I click here on Mercury, it brings up the information about Mercury here. Now I'm going to come here to Jupiter. Let me just make this a little smaller because it's too big. I'm going here to the Sun. Earth. So it lags a little bit here, but it takes me to the planet. So it's pretty cool. It's another way of rendering that it shows here, but it's working perfectly. And with a texture with really nice quality, he put this kind of shiny thing here, so I thought it looked really cool. Now let's see MiMo's version. Notice that here in MiMo, I don't have any speed control. Nothing like that. However, when I click on the planet, it opens a side window with the main information. So it also turned out really cool, and I thought that this rendering here is more visually pleasing. Over there it's too bright, so here he chose this color palette with an animation here, which in my opinion is smoother and easier to see. It could also just be a matter of opinion. But I thought that this rendering here from MiMo turned out cooler, and apparently from what we've been hearing and seeing on X, people are really saying that this new model from Xiaomi is focused on design. It delivers better results, better graphics. When you ask it to create a web page, a rendering, an animation, and so on. So that's where you adjust the parameters of each model. DeepSeek is something more robust, for you to handle large amounts of information. Now this model from Xiaomi focuses more on design, at least in the initial tests. That's what the experts are saying. Cool. Let's go to another example now. Now let's move on to the market analysis test. Starting with DeepSeek V4, analyze the AI tools market. Identify the main competitors, price gaps, and trends. Then generate a structured report, actionable insights, and a go-to-market strategy. DeepSeek V4 Pro. It brought me a structured market report here. Market overview. It even made a little table here. Price gaps, market trends, actionable insights, go-to-market strategy, and at the end, it gave me a conclusion at the end. So it worked well for this kind of research. It took about a minute, and it already brought me this structured report here. Now let's go to MiMo, see the same prompt. MiMo V2.5 Pro. It thought for 1.8 seconds and brought this to me. Market overview, competitor map. It made this table that I can copy or download to my computer. Here in item 3, there's a section on identified price gaps. And then it made this division here into subitems. So I have 3.1, 3.2, 3.3. It made this little table here. Structural trends, actionable insights, market entry strategy. There's text here I can download or copy again. Concrete examples. Another little table here. So, did you notice that the result delivered here by MiMo seems to be more complete? I don't really understand this. I don't know if the information here is correct because all of this was done using just a single prompt. The request here was for the artificial intelligence to take the data and turn it into a report. And apparently, the report, the text that was delivered here by MiMo V2.5 Pro, it's more complete. But then, professionals need to do an analysis to see if this is really true. In this context, it seems that MiMo is better. Well, in this other example here, I uploaded a PDF file, and I asked the artificial intelligence, in this case here, DeepSeek V4, to turn this file into a web page. And this was the result delivered by DeepSeek. Notice that it's pretty cool. Here I have equities, derivatives, fixed income, other data. So it took my PDF file. Like here, in LM Arena, I can't upload a file directly, so I put the link to the file here. It searched and brought these results for me in the form of a web page. Now let's look at the result delivered by MiMo. Notice that here on the platform, I can already upload my report here, and this is the page it gave me. So here I have B3 investors, and it put a responsive chart here. Trading. Indexes, returns, a different way of rendering, but all the results are here. In this case, I like the result from DeepSeek better. Why? I thought it was more complete. When we make this comparison here, I have equities, derivatives, fixed income, and other data that were information that didn't appear at the top of the report. They were more in the middle. DeepSeek was able to identify all of this and brought the pages here for me. I don't have responsive charts, but that's because I didn't ask for them. On the other hand, with MiMo, it brought me a responsive chart with the main results. However, the divisions here, in my opinion, they weren't as detailed as in DeepSeek. Here I only have some topics that I can't even click on. They're static and stop here. So, in this aspect, when I asked to interpret a PDF file and turn it into a web page, in my opinion, DeepSeek did better. Then, in this other test, I asked it to do a rendering, to copy, to emulate Apple's operating system. First here, version made by DeepSeek V4 Pro. Look, it made a login screen here. It's a bit buggy because the texts are overlapping, but that's okay. I'll enter the password here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Done. I managed to get in. It created transparent icons for me here. Look how cool that turned out. Here's my Finder. I wonder if I can change it to dark mode here. No, it's not working. Here too, the colors. Eu não consigo alterar. Network, sound, display. About. It did an emulation here of the App Store. Here I have a rendering here, simulating photographs. Same thing with the music, a terminal. You can type in the terminal, calculator, and down here, I have the animated dock. It's here with transparencies. As I move the mouse here, it moves. And it set the wallpaper here for me too. If I right-click, nothing happens. In other words, it's not aligned here with the emulated operating system. When I click here, it's like I'm clicking on any regular page. Here I can control the sound. I have a fake little bar here, but it looks cool. It managed to give me a satisfactory result here. Now let's go to MiMo. Look, here I have the system created by MiMo. Once again, the icons are animated in the dock. Finder. The rendering here is nice. Documents, downloads, they're not clickable. It's here just as a simulation. Safari, it can't search. It's just emulation. Messages. It emulated some messages here. Notes. I'll add a new note. I can write. Perfect. Look, here's my calendar. Can I zoom in? I can zoom in. And move forward through the months. Notice that the rendering here didn't turn out well either. There's the weather here too. It's set to Cupertino, Apple's hometown, calculator. Then it did a kind of rough rendering here. It mixed horizontal mode with vertical mode. I don't know if you noticed, but in other tests I did here with closed source models, I had some variables here that worked better. Here, in this case, the wallpaper is also working, so that's a point for MiMo. He also put the trash bin icon here, which is empty. And here in the Launchpad, I have access to Apple's system, which gathers all the applications installed on the operating system, so it worked just fine. Now it's a matter of personal preference. There are good things here in MiMo. There are good things over at DeepSeek. It managed to do some transparencies and such if I right-click here in MiMo. Then I do have access to other settings here in the operating system. They're not clickable. Nothing happens. But it doesn't go to that standard right-click menu, like when you're on any web page. So it managed to render this little part here as well. So in this case, it comes down to personal preference. Now in this last example here, I asked both models to do a search for me, looking for the following. Concrete data about the indiscriminate use of painkillers in Brazil. Based on the information found, generate a complete, well-structured report, formatted to be presented at a conference on the subject. This was the result delivered by DeepSeek using the deep mode and smart search. I was also in expert mode here. Then it thought for 17 seconds. It searched through 70 web pages here. And it gave me this report. Indiscriminate use of painkillers in Brazil, a silent public health crisis. It included an executive summary here, introduction and contextualization. Magnitude of the problem. It divided it here into subtopics. It brought up clinical impacts and adverse effects, resistance and tolerance, public policies and regulatory framework, professional initiatives, challenges and future perspectives. And it also included a conclusion with all the references down here. The main information was obtained from 16 websites here on the internet. Now let's look at the result delivered by MiMo. Look, he searched for information here, but in this case, the research was done on 10 pages and not on 70 like we had with DeepSeek. The processing time here was 9.7 seconds. It produced a technical report, presentation, and contextualization. Epidemiological overview, the phenomenon of self-medication, identification, vulnerability profiles, determining factors for indiscriminate use. He included quotes from authorities here. He included the references here. consequences for public health, regulatory framework, national medicines policy, and the rational use of medicines. Summary of consolidated data, recommendations, final considerations, and here he provided the sources consulted. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 sources, so the results are very similar. They even went online. They used reliable sources, and they produced very similar reports, formatted the way I asked. So guys, this is just a preliminary test, where I used the two equivalent models here, and I made several comparisons, rendering, coding, PDF reading, internet searching, and so on. But everyone has their own opinion. For me, I think DeepSeek is better for certain tasks. Related to data quantification, searching for information. It's better prepared for that, when we want something more visually appealing, with better rendering and more presentable graphics. Then I think the Xiaomi model does better, but that's my opinion. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think about these two open source models that promise to shake up the AI market? So, which one do you prefer? Which one do you bet on? DeepSeek V4 or MiMo 2.5? Let me know in the comments, okay? I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.
Moon is a dime, moon just a man.